Let's be honest, everyone has been a bit of a fool for someone. Well, I took this idea to an almost Olympic level. My name is Bernard, and I spent a good part of my adolescence pretending to be something I wasn't, all to get Patricia's attention. Yes, Patricia. She was the kind of girl who walked into a room and everyone stopped to stare. And I barely knew who I was, but I thought I needed to change completely for her to know. Not only her, but also her brother Gustavo. Gustavo made me go through the greatest humiliation of my life. I hit rock bottom, and I'll tell you how it went. I knew that party would be my chance. You know, the party of the year, the kind of event that makes you feel like if you're not there, you don't even exist. I finally got an invitation, and my head was full of expectations. Or rather, illusions. I was determined to get everything right this time, even if it meant changing. I bought expensive, uncomfortable clothes, ones I wasn't even sure suited me, but that seemed essential to look like the guy. All I wanted was for Patricia to see me in a different way. For Gustavo, her always arrogant brother, to respect me. Clara saw me, of course. She was always nearby, watching me with that concerned look. She approached and said, "You don't need to do this, Bernardo. These people won't like you because of clothes or an expensive gift. They're not like that." I knew Clara was right. I always knew, actually, but the idea of standing out in front of Patricia was stronger. I just couldn't tell Clara that. She was my friend, and she didn't deserve to hear about my absurd obsession. I tried to smile at Clara, but all that came out was nervousness. I said something about finally having a chance, and she looked at me, sadly. "Just don't forget who you really are," she said to me. And at that moment, I ignored her, as if her words were just background noise. In my mind, all that mattered was impressing Patricia and Gustavo. That night, everything seemed to be in my favor. I held tight to the gift I had chosen for Patricia. I spent weeks thinking about it. Something I thought would say, "I understand you. I'm different from all the others around you." Anxiety was consuming me, but there was a small flame of hope. I thought, if I get this gift right, she will finally see me. Ridiculous, I know. But we make these desperate bets when we're in love. The party was packed. People laughing, loud music, and I felt increasingly out of place. But I went on. I saw Patricia surrounded by the popular ones, as always. And there was Gustavo, her brother. The way he looked at people, always with that air of superiority. For some reason, I thought if I gained his respect, I would gain Patricia's too. That was what I needed to do. I approached the two, the gift in hand, nervous. Gustavo looked at me. "Hey, Gustavo. How are you?" "I brought this for Patricia. I think she'll like it." But he just looked at me with that contempt that seemed always to be on his face. Gustavo let out a dry, cruel laugh. "Dude, you're pathetic. You think a gift will change anything? Look at yourself. Go away before it gets worse." I didn't know what to say. But instead of leaving, as any sensible person would do, I tried to please him. I tried to be funny. I made a stupid joke about penguins, something that didn't even make sense. I just wanted to break the ice, but all I managed to do was sink deeper. "You're funny. You know, I read that people with a sense of humor are more popular, like a penguin sliding on the ice." I barely finished speaking, and Gustavo started laughing loudly, in a way that drew everyone's attention around. My heart sank. "Really? This is your attempt at being funny? Ridiculous." I wanted to disappear. But then Patricia took the gift, looked at it, and laughed. A laugh. That laugh. She didn't even need to say anything. Just that laugh made my whole world collapse. You know, it wasn't a laugh of happiness. It was a laugh of contempt, the kind that makes you want to disappear. And, as if that wasn't enough, she even made a sarcastic comment. Something about the gift being cute in a pathetic way. I don't even remember exactly. At that moment, her laughter spread to the others. They all laughed. I was there, in the middle of it all, feeling smaller and smaller, more and more invisible. The air seemed to vanish from the room, and I just wanted the ground to open up and swallow me. Humiliation. I think that's the right word for what I felt. But it wasn't just that. It was a kind of shame I had never experienced before. I felt small, ridiculous. All that effort, all the attempts to change, to please, and in the end, all I got was to be a laughingstock. Not only for Patricia, but for everyone there. Those laughs echoed in my head for days. I went home, and the shame followed me. I couldn't stop thinking about how ridiculous I had been trying to please Patricia and Gustavo. And, worse yet, I realized I had pushed away those who really mattered. Clara. I ignored Clara, and now I was completely alone. After the party, things only got worse. I withdrew from everything and everyone, but the silence only made me relive every moment of that night. My friends saw me trying to be something I wasn't. Clara tried to warn me, but I pushed her away. In my quest for approval, I lost the only people who truly saw me. It was a feeling of loneliness like I had never felt before. Being surrounded by people but feeling completely alone. Not because others had abandoned me, but because I had abandoned myself. And it didn't stop there. What happened at the party quickly spread through the school. It seemed that everyone who smiled was laughing at me. Gustavo was always around, reminding me of my humiliation. And he didn't stop. He was relentless, not just with me, but with anyone who crossed his path. I saw Gustavo humiliating other students. Always with that cruel laugh. Once, he bumped into a younger boy in the hallway, knocking all his books down. He laughs and speaks. "Careful, nerd. Don't want your intelligence to rub off on me." And everyone laughed along with him. It was always like that. He made people feel small, inferior. I saw all this, but still, I remained stuck in the illusion that if I managed to impress Gustavo and Patricia, my life would be better. Being friends with the strongest seemed the only way. But the worst was yet to come. One day, during a break, Clara, the only person who still tried to get close to me, came to talk to me. She asked me why I was letting them treat me like that, why I was so obsessed with being accepted by people who clearly didn't care about me. And you know what I did? I pushed her away. I told her she didn't understand, that she was jealous because she would never be accepted like I was trying to be. I hurt the only person who really cared. And in doing so, I broke myself even more. That day, I realized how far I had fallen. But at the same time, I couldn't find a way out. I was torn between wanting to be seen by the popular ones and understanding that I would never be part of that world. I was torn between being myself or continuing to try to be someone they would accept. The crisis was inevitable. In the end, I had become everything I despised. And the worst part, I hurt the only person who had always been by my side. And in doing so, I sunk even deeper. I thought I was dealing with everything alone. After pushing everyone away, including myself, I got used to living in my own bubble. But sometimes, life has a way of pulling you back to reality in the most unexpected way. And that's what happened that day. It all started with a simple student meeting in the school auditorium. It was an event to discuss coexistence issues, and honestly, I was only there because I had nowhere else to go. During the meeting, a younger boy stood up and, nervously, began to speak. He was being bullied, and what he said hit me hard. He mentioned Gustavo. Yes, Patricia's brother. The same Gustavo who humiliated me. The same Gustavo I tried so hard to please. For the first time, he had the courage to speak about it publicly. He was nervous, his hands were trembling. I saw myself in that boy. He was completely vulnerable, there in front of everyone, admitting he needed help. And no one said anything. The silence was suffocating, and I could see in his eyes that he expected to be ignored, as I was so many times. My heart raced. I knew I needed to do something, but it was Patricia's brother. I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to get into conflict with him, but I don't know what came over me at that moment, and before I could stop myself, I stood up. I looked around, felt the surprised looks, and even with a lump in my throat, I spoke. I said that he wasn't alone. I said that I knew exactly what he was going through because I had been there. And at that moment, the shame I had carried for so long seemed to vanish. I was no longer alone, and neither was he. And when I finished speaking, something amazing happened. Other people started to stand up too, offering support, admitting they had gone through something similar. It wasn't just him. It wasn't just me. It was everyone. That was a turning point. Not because I expected the problems to suddenly disappear, but for the first time, I felt I could face all of this, not alone, but with others who were also tired of hiding. Seeing that boy open up made me understand that my story had value. That helping others was, in a way, helping myself. When I sat down again, the silence still hung in the auditorium, but it was a different silence. A silence of change. I knew that from that moment on, things would not be the same for me. I had left fear and shame behind. I had spoken, in public, about how I felt, and it was not us who should hide. Those who should feel ashamed are those who treat others with contempt. After that day, Clara came to me. She was there in the auditorium, and when she saw me speak, I think she realized something in me had changed too. I knew you were still in there. She didn't need to say anything else, just smiled and hugged me. And suddenly, I knew I was no longer alone. Together, Clara and I started forming a group at school. A safe place for anyone going through what we went through. It wasn't anything big at first, just a few conversations after school. But little by little, people started showing up. First one, then another, until that group became something bigger, a space where everyone could be themselves, without fear of judgment or humiliation. In the hallways, I looked at people smiling, and no longer thought it was at me. Some of those smiling had been in the auditorium that day or had passed through our group. And it was there, surrounded by those people who, like me, were looking for a place to belong, that I found my strength. It wasn't about being accepted by the popular ones. It wasn't about trying to be something I wasn't. It was about reconnecting with who I am while helping others do the same. Clara was essential in this. She never gave up on me, and now, together, we were doing something that really mattered. What that boy did in the auditorium was something I never had the courage to do before. He asked for help. And by doing so, he helped me too. It was then that I realized that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is the greatest sign of strength anyone can have. Sometimes, all we need is to take the first step, and the rest starts to fall into place. That's how I found the courage that had always been within me, but I had been afraid to show. What I learned most throughout this journey is that strength doesn't lie in being the most popular or the most admired. True strength lies in knowing who we are and what we really like. Being aligned with this gives us a lot of strength. I spent a lot of time believing I needed to like what others liked, to force friendships with people I didn't want as friends. I let passion blind me to something much more important. Who we truly are and the values we have must be respected, even by ourselves. We lose ourselves when we try to mold ourselves to others' expectations, but we find ourselves when we stand up for our values. The group that humiliated me went on with their lives as if nothing had happened. I spent some time dwelling on this injustice, wishing they would suffer as I did. But over time, I realized that it's not my responsibility to seek revenge or hope that life teaches them a lesson. Life takes care of that on its own. Now, I look around and see that I've built something much greater than a social position or others' approval. Clara and I managed to create a group of people who support each other, who don't hide behind masks. I found friends who truly care, who stand by me not for who I tried to be, but for who I really am. And it was in this environment of mutual acceptance that I realized, the greatest victory is not being accepted by others, but accepting yourself, with everything you carry. Today, I understand that what I was looking for was never out there, but it was always inside me. What I needed was to understand who I am, what I like, and what I value. Presenting who I really am to others is to act with respect for myself. Showing who we truly are is only a problem when we are arrogant and full of flaws like Gustavo. He should be different. He should strive to be a better person. When we treat everyone with respect, we can and should be ourselves. This is a constant learning process. And now, knowing this, I am stronger than ever. My name is Bernardo, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that you should never change who you are to try to win over someone, not even the person you're in love with. I tried everything to be noticed by someone who, in the end, never cared about who I really was. If you've ever gone through this, know that it's not worth trying to be someone else to fit someone else's mold. True love does not require you to hide or pretend to be something you are not. When you are authentic, even with your flaws and insecurities, you attract those who truly value you. Because in the end, The only person you need to impress is yourself. Be true to who you are, and those who truly deserve you will see you for who you are, without the need for masks. Did you like my story? Do you think someone else needs to hear it too? Then share the video, subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and hit the bell to know when another story arrives. Bye.